So welcome back to another video on my channel where I'm going to give you an early insight into no-code tools I'm keeping an eye on. So these are ones I'm actively playing with right now. I'm learning them, I'm understanding, I'm taking the pain away from you guys having to try and get your head around them. I'm going to give you some clear examples in the future, but I wanted to kind of do a video where I kind of give you a bit of an early insight. So the first one is Fastgen. I come across this one while looking at the Flutter Perks program. I thought, well, that looks quite interesting. Have a look, and I thought, wow, this actually could be a really useful tool to bring to your attention. So we're going to have a quick look at that to see how we can add logic into our Flutter applications. I'm also going to look at an Airtable replacement. If you're using Airtable, then there's certainly another option out there for you which can actually be a lot more cheaper if you self-host it yourself. So have a look at that. It's Nocodb. That's the tool. And the third one I'm going to give you an update on is the NAN version 1. I'm going to give you a quick insight into how we plan to cover that on the channel in the future. And then finally, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of maybe not a no-code tool, but Publitio, which is basically a media sort of repository up online, which will be really useful for your front-end applications. But the great thing about it is allow you to do image manipulations by literally just changing the URL that you're actually calling into your image. So some really good stuff in this video. Hopefully you'll stick around and hopefully you'll learn something. So let's get cracking. So if you are using a no-code application builder such as Flutter, you know you can produce the most beautiful looking user interface. You can get it just how you want it. You can call out a Firebase, you can call out a Superbase, and you can do all of that basic kind of data operations that you would expect to do. You can call out APIs, third-party APIs. You can bring in data into your application. That is great, but at some point, it's likely you're going to want to make some logical decisions. Now, of course, you could get your hands really, really dirty if you're a coder, and you can start introducing cloud functions and all of that kind of server layered API stuff that you would do. But the emerging market right now is in these workflow tools, these automation tools that sit out in the wild and allow you to hook onto these for them to actually provide you with the kind of the visual tooling where you can drag and drop stuff to actually make those decisions for you and of course return results back to your application. Now, one tool that is emerging on the market is called Fastgen. Let's have a little look at it and let's see what it can offer. So before we actually have a look at Fastgen behind the scenes and have a quick look at the dashboard, let's explain briefly what Fastgen is providing for you. Okay, so the key thing first is it's providing you with a database, of course. If you are using something like Flutter and you're using Superbase, that should be super familiar with you inside this particular platform. So one, Fastgen allows you to store data on their platform. That's great. The great thing also about Fastgen, and this is where the magic happens, is that it allows you to create APIs, allows you to create this front door, this entry point where you can actually call out from your Flutter application, and then of course you can then go through a series of logical steps. So let's say, for example, you are creating an appointment system. Okay, you need to check to see if there is an appointment available for a user who maybe wants to book it. Okay, so you can actually take that appointment with that user. You can then check, you can do a lookup in the database. You can say, is that appointment available? Yes, it is. And then you can return that positive result back to your no-code application. It could be that that appointment is not available, and then of course you're then going to return back a more negative result. So that logic will reside actually within inside the platform itself. And what's really great about it is it should be really familiar to you. If you've been using Flutter, then you should already be familiar with using action blocks. Now, Fastgen provides you something that looks very, very similar, so you'll be right at home when using the platform. So let's have a little look at the platform behind the scenes, and hopefully you'll like what you see. So within the platform itself, I've just signed in. I've got a couple of APIs that I've actually created. You can see here I've got API selected on the left hand side. I've got a couple of APIs. I've got a get request here that's just going to return back a list of values back to my front end application. And I've got one here called enter contest, which is really just one that I've created here. And you can see here, this is a post request. This is what I would invoke from my application. I'll pass some data into it. I will then go through a series of steps here where I kind of do a lookup in my database. database with inside the Fastgen platform. I can pull some of them data out. I can then do some conditional checks on that data. Is it this value? Is it that value? And I can then separate and move into different directions depending on what I want my application to actually do. And of course, I can go through all of these steps here, and I can then even invoke a workflow, which I've actually created inside my application. Now, this is kind of like a workflow in its own right, but of course, I can actually break out into all of these additional workflows, which can then carry out a series of steps of inside my application. And ultimately, I'm either going to want to return data back to my application, or I'm going to want to return back some kind of success message or something like that, that something is played out in order for my front end application to then display what it needs to display to the user. Now, on the right hand side here, you've got some flow controls here. You can drag these kind of things in. So for example, if I wanted to put an if check down here, I can drag this in, I can drop it here, and then of course now I can click on this and I can now put some checks in. I can actually say, well, okay, well, we'll look at my input data that comes in. Does it equal this value, or does it equal that value? And of course I can then move in a particular direction depending on what that is. So you can do all of this kind of great stuff that you should be pretty familiar with inside a no-code platform like Flutterflow. So it should all be really kind of useful to you. And of course I can do a number of different things as well. I can send Slack messages, I can call out to ChatGPT, I can send emails, I can make additional HTTP requests, of course. So I can invoke this particular API, and then itself can then call out to another API. So there's lots and lots of scope here of how you can actually build up the conditional logic for your application. So let me show you something smart then. Okay, so I've just gone into Postman. I'm just going to actually call into one of the APIs within Fastgen. Don't really worry about the detail here, but just consider that my application is making this call. I'm going to pass some data and I'm going to hit send. I'm getting a response come back. Now, this is the generated response that I've got coming from the Fastgen. It's all customized, of course. I've just told it to return that. If I go back into the Fastgen platform and I go to the log section, if I just do a little refresh here, you can see here that I've made a request now 14 seconds ago. That's the one that I've just done. If I click that and then go over to view in builder, this is the fantastic bit. You look at this, I can actually walk through my actual workflow here, and I can actually see now what actually is done. This is the response that I've just returned. If I click on that, you can see it says already entered contest and failed. Of course, if I go to Postman, that's kind of what I see, already entered contest and failed. So of course you can use this to kind of walk through your actual flow. Now, what's even better about this is I can actually go back into a kind of like a mode where I can actually play this out. I can actually go here and I can actually change this maybe to say 2. I can then test it. And of course, what it's going to do is going to play that out. And I've gone down in this particular direction. And what's even better about this is I can go then actually into my workflow. So I've just called out to this like sub workflow. I can go into the debug mode. I can then click on the invocation of this particular workflow. And then you can see itself that it's actually and which direction it's actually going through. So this is fantastic. I can just come here, I can just change this to 1 here, I can then hit resend. In fact, just test the draft mode here and it will play it again. I can try, say, go into 3, test draft mode, and I can see I could go down in this particular direction. So it's really great platform. You can just sit in this platform, you can test your logic, you can just get it to how you need it to get it. And then of course you can then move back over into your no-code front end, and then you can then implement these API calls for real. So it's a really fantastic system for actually just testing your workflows that you actually create with inside this particular application. So you might be thinking then, what do you need to learn in order to understand this platform? We need to understand the platform itself. Please do head over to the documentation and get yourself into that. It's a little bit lightweight, I would say, at this particular stage. I mean, we're only July in 2023. This product is going to evolve for sure over the weeks and months, and that documentation I'm sure will get better. You're also going to need to probably have a basic understanding of how to actually query a database and how to do updates and all that kind of stuff. Please do have a look on YouTube for that. There's loads of videos out there on how you can update database tables, and you can pull records from database tables and stuff like that. If you look here, this is an endpoint I've called sort of get contests. It's just a get request. Is the sort of thing you would invoke from your front end application to pull a load of data back. As you can see here, if I just hit the send button on this API endpoint, it's returning me back some database rows that I've got in my Fastgen database. And you can see if I just click on the actual database query itself, you can see that I'm just doing a simple select here. I'm passing in a parameter got called status, where I'm just basically trying to match on the rows that I want coming back from my from the actual database query itself. So you just need to get yourself familiar a little bit on how to do database queries. The rest of it though should be really quite self-explanatory, really, in terms of using these flow controls and working in sort of ifs and loops and all that kind of stuff. Again, you'll get familiar with the actual platform itself. Now, the good thing is it also supports authentication as well. So if you want to create user accounts, you've got that right in the system as well. Please do go and have a look at their YouTube channel. Of course, they've got some content that's starting to appear on there. They'll give you some walkthroughs on how to get that set up. But of course, then using that with inside your no-code front end, that's where there needs to be more time spent. So I'm going to put some content together on my channel in the not too distant future as I learn this system more, to then bring it to you on how you can actually then use this with something like Flutterflow and then sort of work on from there in terms of building your application. So hopefully that gives you a little insight into this particular product, Fastgen. Like I said, go and have a look at the documentation, go to fastgen.com, have a look at the offerings that they've got there. Of course, there's a free tier, of course. Grab hold of that, get yourself into the platform, and it's really, really affordable in terms of what they're providing right out the gate. So yeah, hope you found that useful. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one I'm going to show you is Nocodb. Now, this has been around for a little while, but it's one that I'm having a very, very close look at. Now, if you've been using Airtable or you're familiar with Airtable, then this is the replacement. And the great thing about this platform is the fact is you can host this yourself. Now, if you're using something like Railway, which if you see my NAN video on self-hosting NAN, you can do exactly the same thing here with Airtable. And if you want to have probably a 30-second installation guide, then stay watching, because I'll show you that in a second. But what does this actually look like? Well, if you are familiar with Airtable, then this view should look quite familiar. So I've got this running self-hosted. It costs me a fraction of the cost than if I was running it on the Airtable platform. And you can see here I've got my kind of my tables down the left-hand side. I've called one called YouTube content, and here I can come along and I can sort of put titles in here, like test title. This is just like a database table. This is a test. Let's just put a lot of gobbledygook in here. Let's give this a category, so I'm going to put this under Flutterflow, and I'll choose UX design as well. My status, of course, I can choose whether it's not started or it's in planning. So again, I've got all this kind of stuff set up. Now, the great thing about this, of course, is that that's my database table, but I want to put a different view on it, right? So for example, if I want a Kanban, so I want to kind of have a bit more of a plan to how I actually produce my videos, I can add this Kanban board to it. Let's just say submit here. And if I look here, I can now move these things into these Kanban columns, of course. So it's great for if you're trying to put it together an application which allows you to have this kind of view. It's like literally taking me 2 seconds to create that. That's fantastic. But you can also do forms as well. So I can go down here, I can press form, let's just say submit, and I've now got a form I can now send out to my users. I could ask them to fill details in, and of course I can then submit these values back into my database table. It's fantastic. And this is where the magic, right? Not only can I use this myself as like an administration tool, I've then got APIs within inside this platform that I can call out to from my no-code front end, and I can pull that information into, for example, my Flutterflow application to then display to my users. And of course, I can even get my users to invoke the APIs to actually store data back into this platform as well. So do have a look at this. If you're used to Airtable, then this should be really, really familiar with you, but it's a fantastic product and it's really, really cheap as chips to get up and running yourself. So as promised then, let's show you how to install this really, really quickly on the Railway platform. So here we go then. I've got Railway.app account created on my dashboard. Snuggly Club is the Nocodb instance that I just showed you. So let's create a new one. I'm going to go up to new project here. I'm just going to go to deploy from template. I'm going to type in Nocodb, just press that. And I'm just going to give this a different name. So I'm just going to call this test here. Of course, so if you've done all this previously using my NAN video, it should be quite straightforward. If I just hit deploy, well, that's pretty much all I've got to do, right? It's now going to create this instance of Nocodb for me. I can then use that to my heart's content. I'll show you that in just a second when it's fired up. So it's doing all of its magic at the moment. It's just deploying it. So it'll take a few moments to do this. In fact, probably quicker than NAN if we were trying to install that. You'll see here in a very short period of time, this will be up and running. Look at that. 16 seconds it's taken to actually install that. Now, if I click on this here, I'll probably get an error actually, because it does need time to sort of kick into life once it's actually deployed. But if I just give it a few moments and I click the little link here, if I just do that, I might get, it comes up with not found at the moment. It won't be long before that gets deployed. If I just hit refresh here, you can see here that it's spinning up. Probably not. There it is. So now I can create an account on here. Just hit sign up. And there we go, right back to where we were. And of course I can go to new project now. I can give it a name. And of course I can now start creating tables. As you saw on my previous here, the example that I actually had a table. There it is. I could start adding in columns and different type of data types and all this kind of stuff. So away you go. So that's how easy it was. I was up and running within probably less than 60 seconds if you've already got a Railway account. But there is other services out there that also provide self-hosting options. Please just to go into a Google. But Railway is certainly super cheap to get up and running. And by just running these services, and if it's just got kind of like a general usage, then it really is not going to cost you a huge amount of money to run that, and it will be far cheaper than running it with using Airtable itself. Super interesting tool. I'm going to cover this more on my channel in the weeks and months, and I'll show you how to get this hooked up with inside your NoCode application as well. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. So you may have seen previously on my channel, I covered the setup of NAN as a workflow automation tool with inside your own self-hosted environment. A super straightforward and easy to follow tutorial. Please go and check the link above. And of course, please do check the link in the description. It will get you up and running with NAN, which of course you can then use with inside your NoCode application. But of course, they've just released version 1. Version 1 has just really hit the public domain. Now, in my actual tutorial itself, then we're using a slightly earlier version. Now, I've been asked by a couple of members of the community, could I show a way to get us upgraded to version 1? Well, I'm going to give it a little bit of time. I've been looking at the forums, I've been reading some information about version 1. There's a few teething issues, there's a few configuration issues in getting it set up. So I'm just going to wait for version 1 to settle down, but rest assured that I will cover this on my channel in the not too distant future. So that's just a quick shout out to NAN. But if you really want to look about getting this tool up and running, it is absolutely superb. It's going to allow you to put, again, a bit like what we were showing with Fastgen, you can also do something very similar with inside NAN. The only slight difference, of course, is that with NAN, you don't actually have a database that comes part of the system. What you tend to have to do is you tend to have to hook onto databases in order to use the system. So for example, you can connect Supabase up to NAN. So if you had your database sitting on the Supabase platform, you can actually make calls out from here. You can do your logical checks. You can do queries in the Supabase database. You can then again check records and check conditions and all that kind of stuff, and then carry out a number of different actions. So of course that's available to you as well. But again, I'll cover more on my channel in the not too distant future on NAN. It's such a powerful tool, but we'll certainly get up to version 1 very soon. If you are looking to store media up on the internet from your NoCode application, then check out Publitio, because these guys are super cheap. If you look at the pricing here, you can actually store for free 5 gigabytes worth of media assets up online. So these could be videos, these could be images and all that kind of stuff. And when you are ready to upgrade, you can actually then go to the kind of the $9, the 50 gigabyte storage option. So what makes this particular service pretty unique? Well, it allows you to obviously use an API to upload images and actually store them within inside this platform. What's even better is you can actually do URL transformation. So you can upload an image and you can resize it on the fly. Let me show you how that works. If I go over to the actual dashboard here that I've just uploaded one single image here, which is my actual logo. If I actually have a look at what that logo looks like, you can see that it's super large, it's high resolution, and it's rather large. I wouldn't want my users to be downloading something like this from inside my front end application. Now what you can do is you can go up and you can then start manipulating the URL. So you can see here that I've got the file up. If I just put a / here, so I'm in between the /, so I can now say width _600, hit enter. There we go, resize that image for me. So of course I could just make this call out as a network from my Flutterflow application, and I can pull in a 600 pixel width image. Now I can also come along here and I can actually then say comma h _600. Now it's going to look a bit odd. You see it's a bit stretched down, so I've gone 600 by 600 because it's obviously a landscape image. But hey look, if I come into the actual URL here and I do c _fill, bingo, I've got this square aspect image. So you can see here you can manipulate these images using the URL, which is fantastic. There's fantastic documentation on resizing and cropping and putting watermarks in different locations of your image and trimming things down, transcoding sort of videos and reducing the quality of the images as well. There's so much more that this solution can do. So I just wanted to show you that as a quick kind of like demo here of what you can actually do on this platform, but it's well worth having a look if this is something you're looking to include in your application.